I want you to close your eyes for a second. Imagine you're standing in a courtroom.
But not just any courtroom, the Supreme Court of India.
Yes. The ceilings are high, the air is just thick with legal arguments, and everywhere you look, just stacks of paper, petitions, reports, a sea of information.
It's the kind of place where every single detail matters.
But it's also so easy for something to get lost in all that noise.
Exactly. You've got lawyers handing over charts, data tables, calculations.
And arguments are flying about pension regulations and settlements. But according to the document we're looking at today, there was a ghost in that room.
A ghost?
A ghost document, a chart that should have been there front and center, but it just wasn't.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. You're talking about the missing fourth chart.
That's the one. Our CEO, a former econometrician and corporate lawyer, has called the missing chart 4 unacceptable loss of updation, benefits to bank retirees.
Our CEO's actuarial model reads like a detective case, exposing a near 1 lakh crore gap in unpaid pension updation for bank retirees.
₹1 trillion, and this isn't some abstract government debt. This is money that, according to our CEO, is missing from the pockets of 7.5 lakh retirees.
The number is huge, but the framing matters. They don't call it an error, they call it a denial of dignity, shifting the entire moral landscape.
And that is our mission for this deep dive. We're gonna decode the math, unpack this thing called the updation formula, and figure out who these retirees are.
We're analyzing the arguments and modeling in charts 4, essentially a forensic reconstruction of what the authors believe should be shown to the Supreme Court.
So let's start at the beginning, so to speak. Why was this chart missing? Did someone just leave it in the printer?
Well, the authors argue it wasn't forgotten so much as omitted.
The argument in by our CEO is that the court might have just assumed the financial difference between, say, groups 1, 2, and 3 was obvious.
The Supreme Court rightly thought, we can see there's a gap. We don't need a chart to tell us the sky is blue.
Our CEO insists you must know the exact money retirees lost. Without putting a hard rupee value on that loss, the scale and the gravity of the injustice simply can't be understood.
If you don't see the number, you don't see the pain.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's meet these people. The document splits them into 3 groups, Group 1, Group 2, and Group 3. Who are the lucky ones here?
Group 1 is our benchmark. These are the people who retired between January 1st, 1986 and October 31st, 1987, a very specific, very narrow window.
Less than 2 years? What makes them so special?
They got the golden ticket, they received pension updation.
Basically, their pension was revised to align with the 5th bipartite settlement pay scale. In plain English, their pension got a structural lift.
Okay, so Group 1 gets the upgrade. Who got left behind or didn't get pension updation?
That's the core of it. While Group 1 got that structural shift, Group 2, that's everyone who retired between 1987 and 2003, and Group 3 is everyone after 2003 did not get updation.
So this missing chart is really just a giant what-if calculator.
It asks a simple but pretty devastating question. If Group 2 and Group 3 had been treated like Group 1, how much more money would they have today?
And I'm guessing the answer isn't just lunch money.
It's life-changing money. But to understand why, we have to get into a little bit of the math. We have to look at the updation formula.
I was afraid you'd say that, updation. It sounds like one of those corporate buzzwords, but it's a very specific mechanism in this document. How did they calculate this raise for Group 1?
It's a little dense, but stick with me.
Okay, because the mechanics are actually the key to everything.
The source calls it a tapered formula. It wasn't a flat raise, like everyone gets 10% more. It was progressive.
Okay, break that down for us.
So you take the pre-revised pay. For the first 1,000 rupees of that, the pension calculation is 50%. For the next 500, it drops to 45%. And for anything above 1,500, it's 40%.
So it slightly favors the lower end of the salary scale.
Correct, but that's just the frame. The real rocket fuel in this formula is something called a DA merger.
Dearness allowance.
Now, usually DA sits on top of your basic pay. It's an extra, but for this specific updation, they did a merger.
Yes, they baked it in. They took the DA up to 600 points of the consumer price index and merged it into the basic pay before they applied that tapered formula.
Okay, that sounds a bit abstract. I need to see it in action. The document uses a benchmark officer.
Can we walk through his numbers? I want to see how this trick works.
Okay, his pre-revised basic pay is 5,000 rupees. Under the old system, the one groups 2 and 3 are stuck on. His pension is simple 50% of basic pay.
So 5,000 becomes a 2,500 rupee pension, easy enough.
Simple, but now let's apply the group 1 magic. First, the DA merger. Because of high inflation, that 5,000 rupee basic gets a 100% DA merger. So his notional basic pay isn't 5,000 anymore.
It doubles to 10,000.
Exactly, it doubles before you even start. Now we apply that tapered formula to this new 10,000 figure, and when you crunch the numbers, the new pension comes out to 4,125 rupees per month.
Hold on, let me just check the math here. The old pension was 2,500. The new one is 4,025. That's a jump of 1,625 rupees a month.
That number 1,625 is the most important number in this entire document. I call it the seed.
I have to play devil's advocate. RS 1625 feels tiny. Today, barely a lunch out. It seems too small to spark a trillion rupee dispute. Is this really the root of the entire complaint?
That's the trap the missing chart exposes. The trap of linear thinking. You're treating RS 1625 as static. But in pensions, money is alive. It grows, compounds, and reshapes futures.
Because of inflation,
Because of the DA multiplier, that RS 1625 becomes a structural uplift. Each year, inflation raises DA, and DA is a percentage of your pension. So a higher base keeps amplifying the gain.
I get it. Your DA payment is also higher. It compounds. The 1,625 attracts its own DA, which then attracts more DA.
That's it. The document breaks this down into 3 specific eras or DA regimes to show how that little seed grows into a huge tree. It's basically tracking Indian inflation over the last 20 years.
Okay, so walk us through the timeline. The source says this benefit for Group 1 started way back on May 1st, 2005.
Right, so period 1 is what they call the high inflation era, from 2005 to 2010. During this time, the model assumes a DA of roughly 300%.
300%, that seems incredibly high.
It was a very volatile time for prices. So think about what that means. For every 1 rupee of your basic pension, you get an extra 3 rupees of DA. That creates a multiplier factor of 4.
So that small 1,635 rupee difference, you multiply it by 4.
Correct. Suddenly, that monthly gap is over 6 of 500 rupees. In this 5-year period alone, that small uplift translates to an extra 78,000 rupees per year.
Okay, now we're talking real money. 78,000 a year. That's a mortgage payment. That's substantial.
And it gets bigger. Period 2 is from 2011 to 2020. This is the era of the 11th bipartite settlement. The model here assumes a 400% DA,
A 400% markup, a multiplier of 5.
a multiplier of 5. So now that annual difference jumps to 97,500 rupees, nearly a lakh of rupees per year that these other retirees were missing out on.
So for a whole decade, they're losing a lakh a year. That's a million rupees right there, just in that middle period.
In period 3, 21-24, DA drops to 25% after the base reset, giving a 1/5 multiplier. Smaller, yes, but it still adds roughly Rs 24,000 a year.
Stack the years, and it's no pocket change. It's a growing 20-year stream, a slow drip that eventually floods the basement.
Which brings us to the section of the chart that, honestly, it made my jaw drop. The lifetime loss per retiree. They sum it all up.
Let's look at Group 2 first, the 1987 to 2003 retirees. They've been retired the longest, so they've lost the most.
They retired before 2005, they missed every gain. Arrears, the high growth years, and the current period.
So if I was a Group 2 retiree, what's my total damage according to this model?
Okay, so you take the loss from period 1, that's 3.9 lakh. You add the huge loss from period 2, 9.75 lakh.
Plus the tail end from period 3.
The total lifetime loss per person is approximately 14.62 lakh rupees.
1462 lakh, that's almost 1.5 million rupees.
Think about what that buys. That's a serious medical buffer. That is the difference between relying on your children for support and being completely independent in your old age.
It's a nest egg just gone, vanished into the what could have been.
Post 2003 retirees fare slightly better only because they retired later. Assuming a 2010 exit, they still missed the 2011-20 core gains, leaving a lifetime loss of about Rs 10.72 lakh.
Still over a million rupees.
The document is clear. This is the real price of denied updation. Not hypothetical gains, but structural pay group 1 received, and others were denied.
It really changes your perspective seeing the cumulative total, you see a monthly difference and you think, okay, tight budget. You see a lifetime difference of 15 lakhs and you think that's a different life.
Our CEO called it a denial of dignity. And it fits. It's hard to feel dignified when someone who retired just a bit earlier ends up with Rs 15 lakh more simply because of a date on a calendar.
Now, here's where it gets really scary, I guess. We've been talking about one person, but this isn't an isolated incident.
No, it's not, and this is where the document zooms out to the macro view. They calculate the cohort damages.
How many people are we talking about here?
The model assumes there are 7.5 lakh, 750,000 affected retirees. That's a lot of people.
And when you multiply those individual losses by 750,000, my brain is running out of zeros.
It gets heavy fast. The source presents three scenarios. Scenario A assumes everyone is in group 2, the worst case. If all 750,000 retirees lost that 14.62 lakh, the total loss is 1.10 lakh crore rupees.
1.1 lakh crore. I can't even get my head around that. It's bigger than the annual budget of many states.
Scenario B assumes everyone is in group 3, the younger ones. That comes out to about 0.82 lakh crore. Still enormous.
But the reality is probably a mix, right?
Exactly. So scenario C, which the document says is the most likely, is a 50-50 split.
50-50.
In that case, the combined cohort loss is 0.95 lakh crore rupees.
Nearly 1 lakh crore. When you say a retiree loses Rs 1600 a month, it sounds minor. But when you show the court that an entire cohort has been denied nearly Rs 1 trillion, it stops being a complaint and becomes a macroeconomic failure of policy.
It links to the wider economy, shaping spending, savings, even healthcare. But the real power is the precision. Real settlement data, real inflation points, real DA formulas. It's a forensic reconstruction of what they were denied.
It really just highlights the power of that word updation. We hear about pension revisions and think it's a small bonus, but this shows the structural changes like merging the DA. That's where the real magic happens.
It's the difference between linear growth and exponential growth. Group 1 got on the exponential curve, groups 2 and 3 were left on the linear one. And over 20 years, that gap became a canyon.
And the source is very clear. They feel this was a blind spot in the judicial process.
The phrase humble opinion is used, but the sentiment is anything but mild. They're asserting that justice can't be blind to the math. If you don't quantify the loss, you haven't understood the case.
So, what's the takeaway for the listener, even if you're not an Indian bank retiree?
It's a reminder to scrutinize every financial agreement. A headline figure like Rs 1625 rarely tells the full story. You must ask how it interacts with inflation, how it compounds, and what multipliers shape the outcome.
The missing chart isn't just a piece of paper, it's a metaphor for the data we don't ask for.
Exactly. The data that shows the long-term consequences. It's easy to focus on today's paycheck. It's much harder to visualize the paycheck you won't get in 10 years because of a formula tweak you ignored.
And the fact that Group 1 got arrears paid out for 5 years, that just twists of the knife a bit, doesn't it?
It really emphasizes the disparity. Group 1 got back pay. Groups 2 and 3 they got left watching from the sidelines.
I want to go back to that final number, 0.95 lakh crore. If this document is accurate and the Supreme Court sees a chart with that number big, how will it react?
Courts rule on law, but scale shapes equity. When one group loses ₹1 trillion compared to peers, the disparity isn't just legal, it creates a powerful moral and economic pressure.
It moves it from administrative error to social injustice.
Precisely, and that's why they wrote this, to move the needle from accounting to justice, to make the invisible visible.
We covered a lot, from one missing document to a ₹1 trillion gap. A small Rs 1600 seed, compounded by 2 decades of inflation, became a 15 lakh loss for each retiree.
And we learned that in finance, the most important chart is often the one that nobody showed you.
It certainly does. That's all for this deep dive into the loss of updation.
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.